I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we're going to have our acknowledgement of the traditional lands, please.
Yes, thank you.
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe-Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Perfect, thank you. Now we have go to the next approval of the agenda, which is in front of us. Do I have someone put that on the floor? Let's start with Trustee Clark and seconded by Trustee Benjamin. Any comments or questions of the agenda for approval? Okay, all those in favor of the agenda? Okay, so approved. Any declarations of conflict of interest here? Seeing none, we'll go to the approval of the previous meeting on September 11th for the Governance Policy Committee. So let's put this on the floor. So Susan Benjamin, would you like to put it on the floor? Seconded by Trustee Alves. Any comments or questions about the meeting? Okay, Trustee Alves.
Didn't that read up? Oh, sorry, you're right. It was September 11th. I apologize. Okay.
Seeing any, that was a short meeting. So that's right. Seeing nothing there. Okay, all those in receipt of approval of the meeting minutes. Okay, so approved. Okay, we have no delegations tonight, so we're going to go straight to our staff reports. So our first staff report is the conflict of interest policy that will be provided by our human rights Nick Papanano.
Close. Thank you, Chair.
Was that, how close was I?
Start with a P.
Thank you.
But by Wyland Chair.
Okay, thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members of the committee. I'm here today along with Ebby Chukwanwi, legal counsel, to present through you, Chair, an updated conflict of interest policy for your consideration and approval. The conflict of interest policy applies to all PDSB employees and volunteers. The purpose of this policy is to define conflicts of interest and establish guidelines for PDSB employees and volunteers to ensure that their conduct and decisions are in the best interest of the board and to avoid and resolve actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest. This version of the policy being submitted includes updates and formatting revisions from the previous version that was last revised in November 2018. The policy was informed by an environmental scan of neighboring school boards and consultation with public and PDSB union groups. The policy integrates with various existing PDSB policies, including the human rights policy, the hiring policy, the procurement policy, and donations policy. It also aligns with the Ontario Human Rights Code and responds to recommendation number 4 of the Employment Systems Review. The policy defines roles and responsibilities for employees and volunteers, supervisors, human resources staff, and senior staff. The aim of the policy is to ensure fairness in all board processes, to uphold the interest and reputation of the board, and to ensure that no employee or volunteer realizes personal gain as a result of their position or role in the board. In terms of the next steps, if approved, the conflict of interest policy will be operationalized through the conflict of interest operating procedure. It will be posted on the internal and external PDSB websites and communicated to all staff by email. The policy is attached as Appendix 1 for your consideration and approval.
Great. So let's put this on the floor. Trustee Alves, would you put that on the floor? And Trustee McDonald, would you second that? Perfect. So now that's on the floor, do we have any comments or questions? Yes, Trustee Benjamin.
It's not a question, it's just so I think I'm trying to get some clarification. In your appendix 1 in the purpose, the second line of purpose, PDSB employees and volunteers must uphold the public trust. So I just wanted to tell you who comprise the volunteers? Who are you referring to? Because you're talking about employee conflict of interest, but the volunteers, who are they?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Chair, folks who are volunteering with the board, although not technically employed by the board, still have some measure of influence and interaction with board operations. I think of volunteers that work in schools closely alongside principals and teachers and classes, and even as discussed in the policy, we talk about the appearance or perceived conflict of interest. So that you're a volunteer working associated with the institution, that this policy contemplates that volunteers will be still held to the same obligation to declare conflicts of interest when dealing with matters in their role. Thank you for the question.
Yes, sorry. Just like, for example, sometimes we have parents coming in to help, but they are always vetted, isn't it? They have to, don't they? They have to bring in the criminal reference check, et cetera. So that's a different thing because they have to work in the school. So this policy, do you explain this policy to them that they are bound by this policy of conflict of interest when they come to work in the board?
Thank you for the question. This policy is shared publicly and within the internal board website. Volunteers, employees are expected to comply with all of our PDSB policies, including their conduct. I think of, conduct comes to mind to me, but all of our policies that apply to our folks working and volunteering from the board. So this would be one of those policies that volunteers and employees are expected to comply with. Did that answer your question?
Thank you,
So
Chair.
can I dovetail on that, Trustee
Yeah.
Benjamin? But that brings up a good point. What is the onboarding process for volunteers other than a criminal check? Do we, is there like when onboarding for trustee that signed my oath? Is there some onboarding process that they, because it's not just the code of conduct, or sorry, not just the conflict of interest, but there's also social media. There's a whole bunch of policies that they must apply to. Do we have any kind of onboarding process?
Thank you for the question. I think it's a great question. I haven't onboarded myself, a volunteer in a while, so I'll check with the HR team and we'll provide a response back to this committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's a good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
just to add to it, because there is actually a person who is helping a principal, and I've been there for a long time. That is why I was when this thing was included, I wanted to just clarify that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good question. Any other? Yeah, sure. Trustee Alves?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I think section 3.2 does mention it, but just for the people listening online and for the purpose of clarity, contractors are also captured in this definition as employees, correct?
I'll double check 3.2.
Yes, that's 3.2 of 7. Employee means all PDSB staff in a casual, temporary, or permanent position, including but limited to vendors and contractors. Just wanted to confirm that's the case.
Correct. Thank you.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.
That's good. So it really is more than just employees.
Yeah.
And volunteers. That's a good question. Yes, Trustee Davies.
Can I assume then that contractors and all these people will be given a copy of of this document so that they know to adhere to it and what it means?
Thank you here for the questions for you, Chair. That's something I have to get back to. I haven't hired contractors in a while, but I'll make sure I'll find out what let's call it onboarding. Once we sign a contract with a contractor, what compliance that includes with all of our PDSB policies. policy. Thank you.
That's great. Any other questions? So I think I had one question. Let me just look through this. So I didn't have the opportunity to look at the old and new. Was there any structural changes in there? It was just more formatting.
Thank you, Chair. For the most part, there was, in terms of substantive changes, there wasn't a lot of substantive changes. Certainly there was some formatting changes, and the language was clarified to ensure that we aligned with the ESR number 4, right, to make sure we satisfied that recommendation.
And then I'm going to have this question for you, Jasmine. I see it's been 6 years since this is reviewed. Are we on a process every 4 years to review policies?
Yeah. Through the chair, I defer to our policy analyst to provide clarification.
Thank you. As for the policy review and development framework, we aim to have all policies reviewed within 5 years.
5 years, so it's over by a year.
It's over. Most of our policies are over, and so we've added them to a review cycle that we review annually, and that's what's brought forward to the committees.
Yeah. So this means we're going to be busy.
Just a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you,
No more months off. We got to do every month. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. So now I'm going to put this to approval of the new policy. All those in favor? It's passed. So let's move on to our next item, 7.2 is Safe Arrival Program. And we have our superintendent, Michelle Stubbings, who's going to present that for us.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair McDonald, for the opportunity to share with you the revised Safe Arrival Program policy for your approval. The purpose of the policy is to align with PPM 123 Safe Arrivals, and perhaps more importantly, to ensure that all schools have procedures in place to address a student's unexplained absence and/or failure to arrive at school. This updated policy aligns with the required format and includes roles and responsibilities of staff. And while the PPM speaks to the requirement for elementary schools to have this procedure in place, both secondary and elementary schools have procedures in place to report and communicate back to parents and guardians a student's absence and/or failure to arrive in class. This aligns with the Ed Act, Section 265(1)(c), duties of a principal. Consultations with staff groups and with the public have resulted in some feedback as well that has been incorporated into the policy. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, let's put this on the floor. Trustee McDonald, would you put that on the floor? And Trustee Bailey, I see you there. Would you second it, please? Thank you. Now it's on the floor. Do we have any questions or comments? Trustee Clark.
Yeah, I'm just assuming that there is a similar policy for returning a child safe home from school. A separate policy. I'm just asking if there's a separate policy for ensuring that child returns home from school.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Trustee Clark, and through you, Chair McDonald. We don't have a policy to ensure that children arrive home at school. However, if a child, for example, didn't get off the bus, didn't make it to their stop, or, even an older secondary student hasn't shown up at home, typically the parents do call back to the school principal, and we initiate our missing children's protocol. And so not quite a policy, but a protocol.
Okay, so there is something there. Okay, thank you. I'm happy with the policy as written.
Thank you.
I just had to ask that.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald online, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you through your chair. A couple of questions. I just wanted to first confirm that the secondary schools also have a safe arrival program.
Yeah.
And thank you, Trustee McDonald, and through you, Chair, yes, they do.
Okay. So parents shouldn't, if a parent says to me, oh, they weren't aware that their child had been absent from school, can I confidently say, well, you would have been contacted if they were missing? Or they're missing classes?
Yeah, thank you, trustee McDonald. And again, through you, Chair. Yes, that is correct. So a daily message goes home for secondary students. If a student is missing class, it should take, the attendance is taken per class. And in the elementary, attendance is taken after when students arrive in the morning, after nutrition break, attendance is taken, and an automatic call home is sent to the number that we have on file.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. And out of curiosity, what happens to the data that is collected? So I call in and I say, my child can't come to school. I'm sure there is some kind of file or information collected. What happens to that information?
Thank you, trustee McDonald, and through you, Chair. If a parent calls in a child's absence, then the absence is recorded as parent approved.
Okay, so is there any, so after that, like it gets deleted each day, or do we collect it and do anything with the research department with it, or?
So student attendance is collected and reported on report cards. And
Okay.
so we would, yeah, so report cards is really the way in which we collect and inform parents of the cumulative absences and lates throughout the year.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Good. Any more questions, trustee McDonald? Okay. Any more questions here? Seeing none, all those in approval of this policy? So approved. So let's move on to the next item. We're on to virtual schools. So this is exciting. We have the PGSB virtual school and e-learning policy, and that'll be presented by our superintendent, Bernadette Smith. Please proceed.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good evening. I'm joined today by LaShawn Murray, Policy Analyst, Sumita Merwar, Principal of the Elementary Virtual School, EVS, Eileen Sobek, who is Online E-Learning Coordinator and the Technology-Enabled Learning Teacher for the board, as well as Anu Arora, our Principal of the Peel Virtual Secondary School and Chair of the Ontario E-Learning Consortium, which is the provincial governing body of e-learning for Ontario in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. I'm pleased to recommend the approval of the virtual schools and e-learning policy, a newly drafted policy that establishes a structured, equitable framework for virtual learning within the Peel District School Board. This policy builds on the successful foundation laid during the pandemic and positions us to offer ongoing, high-quality virtual education options to our students. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that our virtual programs deliver the same rigorous academic experience as our brick and mortar schools do. It's essential to reinforce that virtual learning, as outlined in the policy, is not an alternative, but an equivalent to in-person education. Our virtual schools follow the Ontario curriculum and are staffed by certified educators committed to the same high standards of instruction and support services available to our in-school students. The policy's introductory statement captured this commitment well, stating that our virtual learning options provide students with the same high-quality instruction, academic rigor, and comprehensive support services as traditional brick and mortar schools. This approach ensures students earn fully accredited credits, equipping them for both post-secondary and career success. This policy applies to all students, educators, and support staff engaged in online learning within the PDSP across all grades. It encompasses synchronous and asynchronous learning models, supporting flexibility and diverse learner needs. This policy is fully aligned with the ministry guidelines specified in PPM 164 and 167, ensuring our virtual offerings meet provincial standards for learning hours, engagement, and accessibility. It also aligns with our human rights, equity and inclusive education and anti-racism policies, which aim to foster an inclusive, supportive, and equitable learning environment for all students, regardless of background or circumstances. The policy includes several core sections that establish expectations for all stakeholders. The guiding principles within the policy emphasize that our virtual education should focus on student-centered, equitable practices. We aim to provide a safe, inclusive, and engaging learning environment This commitment is underpinned by digital citizenship, equity, and mental health support to create a well-rounded online experience. Engagement is critical to successful online learning. The policy details expectations for student attendance, active participation in synchronous and asynchronous activities, and adherence to digital citizenship guidelines. These engagement standards ensure that students remain connected, involved, and accountable, mirroring the structure and discipline of an in-person schooling experience. Clear roles and responsibilities are outlined for students, educators, and parents and guardians. Educators are expected to monitor participation, provide timely feedback, and support students in their learning. Parents are encouraged to support their children in maintaining a conducive learning environment and respecting the virtual learning space. For students, the policy requires them to engage respectfully and actively, fostering an environment where they can take ownership of their learning. To address potential barriers related to digital equity and privacy, the policy places digital equity at the forefront, ensuring all students have access to technology, internet, and the necessary resources to participate fully. It also reinforces stringent privacy protocols to protect students' and educators' information, meeting MFIPA and board requirements for secure data handling in virtual environments. Recognizing the unique skills required for online teaching, the policy mandates ongoing professional development for educators. This training will ensure educators are prepared to deliver high-quality, inclusive instruction that meets the diverse needs of virtual learners. It also aligns with our Empowering Modern Learners vision, fostering digital fluency and innovation among staff and students alike. The policy includes robust guidelines for academic integrity, ensuring that all students understand the importance of honesty and respect in the virtual setting. This section is designed to maintain trust in the academic process and ensure that students' achievements are a true reflection of their efforts. The policy also emphasizes student well-being and community building within virtual spaces. Guidelines are in place to support student mental health and promote a sense of belonging through intentional interactions in synchronous sessions and available guidance resources. In terms of our next steps, upon approval, we will initiate a comprehensive communication strategy to inform students, families, and staff about the policy details. This rollout will include updates on our website, and both elementary and secondary schools have websites, information sessions, and direct communications through our school platforms. In parallel, professional development sessions will equip educators with the necessary skills to execute this policy effectively. In summary, the virtual schools and e-learning policy is a foundational step in ensuring that virtual education within the Peel District School Board is both accessible and held to the highest standards of quality. With a robust framework that emphasizes academic rigor, equity, engagement, and support, we are prepared to meet the diverse needs of our students in a digital learning environment. I recommend that the Board of Trustees approve this policy as we move towards a future-ready, inclusive, and dynamic approach to education and continue to innovate teaching and learning to ensure student achievement and well-being. Thank you for considering this significant advancement for Peel District School Board's virtual learning programs. My team and I are happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, let's put this on the floor. Thank you so much. Trustee Bailey, would you put this on the floor? Yeah, I got a nod, seconded by Trustee Clark. Okay, now that's on the floor, do we have any questions, comments? Trustee Alice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple. So I was reading section 310 of the policy. Online learning, also known as e-learning, offers secondary students an opportunity to take courses that are delivered entirely using the internet, do not require students to be physically present in the classroom. So forgive me if I'm asking an obvious question, but would a student that's enrolled physically in secondary school, would they be able to say, they want to opt to take XYZ class online and not do it in person? My understanding is they can do that.
Thank you for the question, Trustee Alves, and through you, Chair. So students who are in brick and mortar schools can access e-learning courses from the Peel Virtual Secondary School. So there's two different kinds. The e-learning courses are the asynchronous courses. So there's no teacher present. They're taking it through the course content that is delivered to them through the e-learning component, which is part of the Ontario e-learning consortium. The virtual courses are for the ones that have the synchronous opportunities where there's a teacher, and that would be within the Peel Virtual Secondary School. So those courses are only offered to students that are registered within the Peel Virtual Secondary School. So to answer your question, students then in the brick and mortar school wouldn't be able to take the synchronous courses, but could take the e-learning courses.
Thank you. And that helps my clarification. So if a student wanted to have a teacher present, they would either have to pick between brick and mortar and or Peel Virtual School.
And there's a lot of cases, especially in some of my son in schools where the class is canceled because they don't have enough. And then one of the offerings is, oh, you have an e-learning course.
So my next question, you mentioned that when it comes to digital equity, we ensure access to the internet. How do we do that?
And thank you for the question, through the chair. I'm going to pass it over to Principal Aurora so that you can hear from her as well and get to know them a little bit more as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Superintendent Smith, and through you, Chair. The answer to that question is that to ensure equity, we do provide supports to students who do not have access, for example, to a Chromebook or a laptop, etc. So any student who doesn't have access to the actual technology, we do provide resources to the students. With regards to learning experiences, we ensure that the learning experiences are equitable and accessible to all students. And by that, I mean that we work really hard with our staff to ensure that we're embedding culturally responsive pedagogy and, designing experiences that all students can access.
Thank you. And sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, Superintendent Smith mentioned access to internet. My question is specifically, how do we pay for internet for students?
So for students who don't have access to internet, we do provide Wi-Fi sticks
Oh,
so
wow.
that they can have access to internet.
That is amazing. I didn't know that we did that. I'm glad to learn that. Thank you so much.
Everybody goes. I see Trustee McDonald online has the question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, through your chair. So I see that at 4.11, it speaks about, when you talk under the guiding principles, about ongoing professional development. When staff have PD, are they absent from their classrooms? Is it similar to the brick and mortar schools? Do you have a substitute teacher in? How does that work?
Thank you for your question, Trustee McDonald, and through you, Chair, I will ask Principal Merwar to respond.
Thank you for your question, and through you, Chair. Is the question about how I just need you to repeat the question about how all of our staff are PD through virtual learning?
No, when a staff participates in PD, are they absent? Like, how does the PD work? Do you require getting an occasional teacher to fill in for them? How does that work?
Yes, we do have supply teachers that would come in just like a bricks and mortar school, and they would cover the class with the daily plans that are left back with from the classroom teacher. And in the morning, just like we would at a bricks and mortar school, we would ensure that the staff member who is covering that day has access to the VLE, the virtual learning environments, for the entire day, including links, so that the students' transitions are smooth.
Okay, thank you for that question, because I was just wondering, given the shortage of occasional teachers, and there are many bricks and mortar schools that actually have unqualified, well, not trained and licensed OCT teachers, sometimes it's lunchroom supervisors that are standing in classrooms because we don't have physical bodies to fill the absences. I was wondering if there was any thought given to having asynchronous learning so that the Peel Virtual School wouldn't have to be posting job openings, so that hopefully more will get picked up in our bricks and mortar schools. Just a thought.
So thank you for that suggestion, Trustee McDonald. And for professional learning, it's just like any other school in terms of there are students in these classrooms, and so they require occasional teachers to take over the learning, the pedagogy for that day. And we certainly follow as well the rules within the district in terms of how many occasional teachers we are using or accessing in order to provide the professional learning. We also offer staff meetings similar to other schools based on the collective agreement, which are after school once a month. And so those, we do ask our teachers to come in person for those meetings. And so there are those opportunities for learning in person with them as well. So treated very similarly to a brick and mortar school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go to trustee Davies and then we got. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I probably won't be able to answer this question off the top here, but I'm just getting a little concerned. Like we have kids who are in brick and mortar schools and they can switch to a virtual if that course isn't available. How does that affect our grants from the government or student needs and that sort of thing?
Thank you for the question and through you, Chair. So students don't just switch into the virtual school. There is a process. So let's say a student decides that they do want to access Peel Virtual Secondary School. There is a process where we would see if we would have courses available for that student to be able to be admitted into the Peel Virtual School and so on. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It's just like I find. So there isn't a course available for what they want. They're enrolled in the brick and mortar school, but it is available online, so they can take that course online. How does that affect our grants from the government?
Grants, right. So the grants for the government, they apply to students in virtual schools similar to how they apply to brick and mortar schools. So staffing, we follow the same staffing process in terms of the school organization and so on. But let's say that there is a student in a high school that wants a specific credit, but it's not available at their school. Their guidance counselor would likely support them to find another course that would fill their schedule that meets their needs for graduation requirements. So they couldn't just take a course from the Peel Virtual Secondary School. That is only applicable to e-learning courses. So those asynchronous courses where every student requires two, according to Bill 67, in order to graduate for the OSSD. And that's where they would access those through the Peel Virtual Secondary School.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm gonna go to trustee Bailey online.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Building on what trustees Davies is saying, was asking, is there a minimum courses that you could take in virtual school?
Thank you for the question and through you, Chair. So a minimum number of courses through virtual school in a year, you mean, or within a student's
in a semester for high school students?
Okay, I'll pass it over to Principal Aurora for the response.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. Trustee Bailey, there is a minimum if we're referencing asynchronous courses through e-learning. So we would allow a student to take one course asynchronously per semester for e-learning. So those are the asynchronous courses. For synchronous courses that we offer through PBSS, as Superintendent Smith described, there is a registration process. So that would be pending availability, but our recommendation would be that the student take a full timetable with us for the entire year at Peel Virtual Secondary School synchronously, and or if necessary, due to other mitigating circumstances, we might allow for a part-time timetable if programs are available. But with regards to asynchronous, we do suggest only one asynchronous course per semester.
So now that brings to mind, because I was at a school and I'm trying to remember what school I was at, where it came to mind where a lot of the plaza schools were coming to mind where we were losing funding to these plaza schools, and they were coming to Peel District School Board where they came to take only the specific school, get the credits for those 1 credits that they needed for graduations. Now, how does that work for these credits? Would that work? How would that be impacted?
So if I'm understanding correctly, that would be, we would be able to support a student with that 1 credit that they're missing, provided that we have space in our program. So we only offer X number of sections per year for different courses. And so if once they're filled, and again, we share these courses with all the other boards that are part of the OELC, which is the Ontario E-Learning Consortium. So we're capped, you could think of it that way. We don't have complete program availability for every course. So there is a possibility to offer through the Peel District School Board, through e-learning, that 1 credit course asynchronously that a student might require. So as you mentioned and described, so that they wouldn't have to go outside of the Peel District School Board to take that credit. They could potentially find it asynchronously through e-learning.
And I think let's just clarify that some more. Like, as you said, a person sitting in Peel, maybe in a Peel school or not, could access a e-learning course on another board and do that 1 course.
They could. So part of our governance model with the OELC is that we share those sections across all the other boards, but we maintain the funding with us because the student is still registered in a Peel District School Board. So if the student wishes to take a grade 12 calculus class, it's not available through Peel e-learning. The student, we could look to see in a member board that shares the OELC with us, they could take that course, let's say in Ottawa Carleton. So again, that student still remains with the Peel District School Board. The funding still remains with the Peel District School Board. And so it's a way to retain students in our board.
I hope that helps answer or provide a little more depth for you, Carl. Good. Okay. I'm now going back to Trustee Ellis. He has the following question, and we'll come to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. So the e-learning courses count toward the 30 credits and meet e-learning requirements for graduation. I think you talked about a minimum, but I want to just clarify. Is there a maximum number of e-learnings that a student could sign up for? So if a student is in a brick and mortar school, but they really want to fast track their education, to what extent are they able to do this?
Thank you, Trustee Alves, and through you, Chair. There is really not a maximum and only a minimum. The reason I say that is because, again, we're limited in our program availability with the sections that we offer. And quite frankly, the sections throughout the province. There is a much greater demand for e-learning courses that we've noticed in the last 4 to 5 years, so much so that many boards across the province are unable to fulfill and meet that demand. So while we say a minimum of 2, we say that for a variety of reasons. 1 is because of potential lack of space. 2, we find that some students, if they have more than 1 asynchronous course, it doesn't suit their learning style, and perhaps they're not well set up to be successful if they have more than 2 in any given semester. However, if there are mitigating circumstances and a student requires more than 2 in a year, more than 1 in a semester, we do look to see if we have space and availability to provide that.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So sorry, maybe I phrased my question wrong. Imagine you're a student, you're well achieving, and you have the bandwidth after school to take another 3 classes in a semester, simply for the opportunity to fast track your education and graduate. Or would that be possible?
It would be possible if we had program availability and space.
Okay, understood. Or they could do it through a third party or another board.
Again, if we had program availability through the other boards, as long as we had program availability and they had program availability, yes, they could.
Interesting. Thank you.
Trustee Clark.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The question is about the security, data storage, Section 4.44, online educators and administrators must ensure that any data collected during virtual learning is stored securely and used solely for educational purposes. How do you do that? And what happens to the data after a presumed amount of time has elapsed where it's no longer needed? Or, I don't know about you guys, but I still have a lot of my workbooks from grade 1 and what we used to call Nova Scotia grade primary, which is more like senior kindergarten here. But what happens to all that information, and is the student able to retain that themselves? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Trustee Clark, and through you, Chair. I'll start the answer and then we can probably add on. So we work within the D2L Brightspace Learning Management System, the LMS, which is governed by the Ministry of Education, or endorsed by the Ministry of Education, is paid for boards by the Ministry of Education, and we work very closely with our LTSS, our Learning Technology Support Services, our IT team, to stay within that domain as well as within the Microsoft Team domain. So I'm not going to go into all the details with regards to how all that information remains private, but because we work within the district's domain, the privacy and protection of all student information remains secure. Once we go to third-party apps is where problems can open up. Hence the reason why we have approval processes for any of those third-party apps, including AI, whatever it might be that teachers want to use. And so we would go through a rigorous review process, and that's all set up within our district, within also external third parties that work closely with us for that to ensure that data privacy. And when that review happens, and there's any indication that any data is going to be used, for instance, for research purposes by an external partner, we do not approve that app. And so it is not available on our system. So that is how that remains. And within shells, I'll pass it over to Principal Merward. Within shells of the D2L Brightspace, there are different documents within there, and Principal Merward will share what happens year to year as schools roll for 1 year.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I think part of your question was also perhaps to how do students retain some work that they do that they're proud of, and how can they keep it? So in various manners, in D2L Brightspace, there is a portfolio option that carries through the student's educational and academic career. We do speak to our parent community to take screenshots, or we will send privately through Power School, or we'll send it through sort of really tight parameters on how we would share student information, and they would be able to retain their work that way. Anything that's done digitally that is accessible to the entire class or to other student numbers is deleted once the project has been assessed and is part of the assessment for the reporting periods. And all community members are given an opportunity to make sure they retain what they wish to, so that they can't go back and make changes and again, back to the integrity of their work that they complete.
Okay, thank you. So they're not able to, for example, print from the screen. They have to. They go through the administrator or the. There's a methodology for them in order to get a copy from the school. They just can't do it themselves.
Sure, I'll clarify. Absolutely, they can print at home, and many of our families are privileged to have that ability. We too will allow for print. We have some in-person activities, and they come pick up some of the things that they need. So we ensure that just for equitable purposes, for those who can't print, that we give them the opportunity to maintain. Sometimes we mail them home if they wish that they may be a little farther from our location, and so we do provide every opportunity for them to have what they wish to have before they end school year.
Okay, so all the security and retaining of personal information and data, which is used to measure their effectiveness and how often they're on there, is within the software developers' purview, or how much influence does the school board have over that?
So thank you for your question and through you, Chair. So that is what I was trying to describe anyway earlier within the D2L Brightspace learning management system, as well as within Microsoft Teams. So that is the whole, think about it as the firewalls of the district. So that's all secure within there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, trustee Benjamin.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My question is, a student who is in virtual school, suddenly the family has to move out of Ontario, but within Canada. And it's a crucial year for that student. Would you allow that student to continue in the virtual school even though it's outside the province?
And thank you for the question, Trustee Benjamin, through you, Chair. We take every situation under scrutiny and consideration. So we have students that have had those circumstances, and certainly it just depends on what the circumstance is. We will support the student. It's about the student first. And so we see what kind of supports that we can provide within, whether it be the elementary or the secondary school. And we do have students that do access our programs from across the province. According to the Education Act, they can, if they do not have this program available within their own district. And, you know, I know that there's a lot of questions with regards to virtual school, and we'd be happy to provide more insight, because this is something that not everyone knows a lot of information about, but it's quite fascinating with regards to the kind of learning that is happening. We have expertise in the teachers in terms of their pedagogy, their engagement of students, and so on. So we're very happy to share more information at a later time as well.
So why don't we bring that discussion to your committee,
Curriculum.
the curriculum?
Yeah.
I think, we've been running now for 2 years or.
This is our third year.
Third year now.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good to have an update and present it at that committee. So I'll leave it with, we're gonna have a new, that's different. But that would be the right process.
Okay.
We're talking about the policy here. So seeing no more further questions or comments on this, all those in favor of this new policy? So passed. Thank you so much for answering all those great questions. Now we're gonna move on to staff code of conduct policy. We're going to have Lisa Boleo present to us that, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Through you, Chair, I'm here this evening to present an updated code of conduct policy for your consideration and approval. The code of conduct policy applies to all Peel District School Board employees and volunteers, regardless of the position and level of responsibility, and is aligned with the human rights and anti-racism policies. The purpose of this policy is to outline the board's expectations regarding conduct and behavior, and to set standards for safe, inclusive, accountable, and respectful learning and working environments to deal fairly with employees alleged to have engaged in misconduct, ensuring that discipline is warranted, ensuring that discipline, if warranted, is proportionate to the seriousness of the misconduct, and further to ensure that disciplinary measures are consistent with the board's obligation under workplace laws. The policy is grounded in the board's mission of cultivating an organizational framework that ensures all employees and volunteers are treated with respect, dignity, and fairness. It is informed by an environmental scan of related policies and procedures from neighboring school boards. The revised policy has also received feedback from internal and external counsel, senior leadership, and public input. It integrates with the human rights policy, anti-racism policy, safe and caring schools, criminal background check policy, the Ontario Human Rights Code, the Provincial Code of Conduct for the Education Sector Regulation 521, as well as collective agreement provision. It responds to the Employment Systems Review Directive 24, recognizing and assessing systemic discrimination, emphasizing the importance of clear expectations of accountability for all staff. It is essential that the public have confidence in the integrity of the board's employees and volunteers as they occupy positions of public trust and confidence. To encourage their accountability, the board has revised and reviewed the code of conduct to include key changes in guiding employee behavior through clear expectations of accountability and reflecting the evolving values and priorities of the board to first strengthen the employment equity infrastructure by prohibiting discrimination of any form and emphasizing the board's commitment to opportunities for all. Second, create a more inclusive and welcoming work environment. And third, creating equitable policies and practices. In terms of next steps, upon approval, we look forward to operationalizing the code of conduct through the progressive discipline procedure. Both policy and procedure would continue to be reviewed by the senior team and included in professional development with school administration and reviewed at staff meetings. It will be posted on the internal and external PDSB website and communicated to all staff, unions, and associations via email or scheduled meetings. The policy is attached as Appendix 1 for your consideration and approval. I'm happy to receive any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Trustee Clark, will we put this on the floor? Seconded by Trustee Benjamin. Thank you so much. Anyone have any comments or questions? I'll have one. We're volunteers, I see there, and employees, which also would mean contractors and other things. So they all have bonus. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, sorry, Trustee Davis and then Trustee Bailey.
Yes, but through you, Chair, this is a very important one. And I have in the past seen where I get email notifications for training that I have to take.
Right.
Would it be considered that maybe we should do something like that for this so that everyone is aware of this new code of conduct and you are to adhere to it? Maybe have a little, go through it, a couple of questions, that sort of stuff, so that we have verified training that has been given on this so that everyone is responsible for it and knows about it. Like we have a record of training that they have gone through this. Like I can just see that this is the big one. This is important and everybody should go through this. And that's just my comment there. Thank you.
Thank you for your question and through you, Chair. Certainly, when we speak specifically to trustee code of conduct, that would be governed through the trustees code of conduct specifically, but happy to take back and review what might be possible around training opportunities for the broader representative group.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bailey, you're next on the list.
Thank you, through you, Chair. It's not only this one, it was also the other one that was earlier mentioned that we went through, and I thought about it, but I was like, whatever. But we have a lot of co-op students. They're not students, they're not volunteers, but it doesn't refer to any of them here in any of these documents that we do, and any of the policies that we reference or create. But a lot of co-op students come through the Peel District School Board. How come they don't reference any of them?
And let me just add that, and that's a great point, not just co-op, but let's say to student teachers. And stuff, right? Yeah. This one.
Technically students, not staff.
Sorry, somebody said something I didn't hear.
No, I'm sorry. I was just trying to, sorry.
Sorry, thank you for your question through you, Chair. We do have agreements that we sign with those particular organizations that would be affiliated with the board. So that would be covered through that.
But I don't see it referenced in either the two policies, the conflict of interest, nor the staff code of conduct. So, LaShawn.
Through you, Chair, I just want to direct to the application and scope for the conflict of interest policy, which includes student teacher as well as other volunteer student placements.
Okay.
On page 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Great answer.
Great answer. Great catch. There. Okay. Trustee Bailey, that okay? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Now we're on to Trustee Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, through you. One of the questions I had, and just a broad question. How would staff receive this code of conduct update to the policy? Like, who from the board would contact, say, for example, the unions to disseminate the information?
Thank you for the question, through you, Chair. So generally what happens in this kind of a scenario involving this contact, we would operationalize it through the new operating procedure, which would go to the senior team. We would review, make sure everybody understands the content, everybody's responsibility according to that. And then from there, it would go through the superintendents and operationalize and be actioned in the school level. So it may come through school meetings that the superintendent's having, but it would come through teacher meetings and through PD sessions that are going on. The other piece would be coming through email and also involved in the website. So there would be reference to that.
And sorry, through you, Chair, would this also include staff aside from teachers and admin? I'm thinking of perhaps our custodial staff or other operational staff members, contractors down the line. I'd be curious to know what the mechanism is for the superintendents are using to send them this information. I know we had a policy on this, I think it was last year or the year before, where we talked about how information was distributed. I'd be curious to know how we're doing now, just to make sure that all of our employees get this. Right? Exactly. That's right.
Certainly. Thank you for the question, through you, Chair. So there are broader communications that go out across the board through the intranet, which would include training, mandatory training and that. But I'm happy to bring back a plan as to what that looks like in terms of communicating that.
Thank you. That would be very nice. Thank you.
Right, and I think, the conflict of interest and the code of conduct are probably two really important aspects that I'll just use my experience in my company. When those things happen, everyone gets an email notification, a summary of potential changes and reference to the document. Anyway, I would love to hear what you do as your communication plan for those. Thank you. Good question. Seeing no more questions, so let's go to a vote. All those approving this updated policy, so passed. So now we're going to go on to the annual policy management program update by Shauna.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Tonight, I'm presenting the annual report for the Policy Management Program. This report outlines the activities and accomplishments of the program during the 2023-2024 school year. In response to the minister review, the board has been actively creating the conditions necessary for effective, transparent, and respectful governance through the review and development of board policies, procedures, practices, as well as annual learning. In establishing good governance, the Policy Management Program, established in 2022, aims to develop and implement a framework for a systemic approach to policy and procedure development. This approach ensures that all board policies and procedures are compliant with relevant legislation, that they align to the vision, goals, and priorities of the board, that they're informed by the voices and experiences of the Peel community, and that they reflect our commitment to equity, inclusion, human rights, anti-oppression, anti-colonialism, anti-racism, and accessibility. Throughout the last school year, the Board of Trustees approved 11 new policies, 19 updated policies, and repealed 5 board policies. The board also approved 2 procedures pertaining to the Director of Education. Internally, Directors Council approved a total of 26 procedures to support the work of curriculum and school improvement, the Director's Office, Human Resources Partnerships and Equity, Governance and Policy, Safety and Wellbeing, and Special Education. During the last school year, 11 procedures were repealed by Directors Council. The specific titles and purposes of each approved policy and procedure are outlined within the attached report. Last year, we also launched the new classification system, reflecting the assignment of new policy IDs and functional categories, as well as we revised the internal and external policy website pages. These revised pages facilitate enhanced search and filter capabilities so that individuals are able to search by keyword, as well as filter by category and document type, This supports faster and easier retrieval of board policies and procedures. Throughout this current school year, our department will continue the implementation of the policy management program, building capacity of responsible offices on policy and procedure development, and engaging in the cyclical review and development of board policies, procedures, and guidelines. Thank you, and I'm happy to respond to any questions at this time.
Thank you. Let's put this on the floor. Trustee Benjamin, seconded by Trustee Alves. Anyone here? First, Trustee Alves, and then I see I have Trustee McDonald online after that. Okay.
I think something what say for 7.6.
Not this one. That's the next one.
Looking at 7.6, are we not on 7.6? Policy management. I'm sorry. My questions for the next policy I was reading.
Okay.
I apologize.
No problem. Trustee McDonald.
Thank you, through your chair. I was just wondering if LaShawn could repeat what she said about something about being repealed at the Directors' Council. I was taking notes. I didn't get that part.
Yes, so we repealed 11 procedures. And oftentimes when we repeal procedures, it's because the content is reflected in another document. So we're not introducing any new procedure gaps. It's just that they're covered in other documents, procedures, guidelines, or protocols.
Okay, thanks. So when you repeal such policies, do they have to come to the board first, like to approve them, or?
So the policies that were repealed by the board last year would have been in the motions for consideration.
Oh, okay, got you.
And
Thank
then
you.
a similar process internally for Directors' Council. The teams provide a memo outlining sort of why the procedure needs to be repealed, how that content is reflected in other existing documents, and how, the direction that we're moving forward aligns with relevant legislation.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Perfect. Any other questions? So I know, LaShawna, you're organizing things, not just talking about what we just did last year, but you're also planning this year's or next year. Have you put a schedule together of the policies that you're going to be reviewing or new ones going to be implemented? And is that something that we should maybe bring forward to this meeting maybe at some time, just so we have a look see ahead? People may see, okay, it's coming up in two months or not, type of stuff.
Absolutely. So we do have a work plan that's set because policies take time in ensuring that we have, we spread out consultations throughout the year to allow for community and staff voice. So we could bring the draft policy review schedule for this year back to the committee. It is tentative, just depending on also being responsive to emerging issues that arise in the policy portfolio.
Okay. Well, you don't have to, I think community members, I'm not speaking for it, but it would be nice to see what policies on the year we're looking at. Don't have to say it's going to be the first of the year or the last year. And like everything, it's a work in progress. So we're keep planning something can be moved. Okay, I think I have agreement around the board. That would be nice if you could do that. Nothing extra. Don't waste a lot of time on it. Okay, Trustee McDonald, do you have a question? Can't hear you, you're muted.
Sorry, no, I didn't have a question.
Okay.
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no more questions here, it's on the floor. So all those in approval of receipt of this policy management program report, all in favor, so passed. So now we can go on to 7.4, which is proposed amendments to the PDSB procedure bylaw. And it's for information presented by our governance officer, Jasmine Corrigan. Yours.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, I present to you this evening the proposed amendments to the procedure bylaw report. In March 2020, the Minister of Education issued directions to the Peel District School Boards. The objective of this review was to assess the PDSB procedure bylaw
and Governance Directive 7. I'm pleased to report that part 1 of that directive, which deals with the self-identification process for committee membership, has been successfully completed. However, part 2, which mandates a 3/4 majority vote for committee compositions, is still pending. Key highlights from the review include the incorporation of the outstanding section into the procedure bylaw and the addition of a new definition that clarifies how to calculate 3/4 majority vote. In terms of background, the review ensures compliance with ministry directives and aligns our practices with good governance standards. We identified the need for some amendments and clarifications regarding committee voting procedures. From an impact perspective, regular updates to the procedure bylaw help the board meet its legal obligations while fostering trust and clarity within the community. Looking ahead, we will provide public notice at the November 20th organizational board meeting about the upcoming consideration of the amended bylaw on November 27th. If approved, updates will be made to both the internal and external board websites, and we will also confirm to the Ministry of Education that part 2 of Directive 7 has been satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is for information only, as you heard that they will be brought as a notice, as bylaws are brought by notice, and then voted on the next meeting, so 20th to 27th. I just want to add some bits before we put this on the floor. The supervisor took Directive 7 and then went through the whole review of the composition and then changed the bylaws. And this is further requirements since then by the government to add the 3/4 vote of the committees that will be striking on the 20th. So I'm going to put it on the floor and then I'm going to ask a question after that. But so Trustee Alves, would you put it on the floor? And Trustee McDonald, would you second that? Yeah. And so the question I'll ask, but just continuing on. We have our 20th organizational meeting. Are we still going to probably use the 3/4 or it's 2/3 right now, right? Current bylaws.
Correct, that would be the requirement as the bylaw reads now. But that will be the will of the board if they'd like to surpass that.
Which we could do with a 3 or something. Anyway, okay, thank you. Okay. Any other questions, comments? So we're going to certainly have this on the 20th. It's coming to be just a notice, and then we vote on the following week, on the 27th. So seeing no questions or comments, this is for
Mr. Chair, just before you go, just for trustees to know that this is really important because the director and I will be meeting with the ADM next week, and I have to make sure that I provide their information that this will be coming to the board for approval. So I'm sure that this is done because it's a part of the ministry directive. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair Green. Now, we're not approving anything that it is just not the way it's happening here. So I'm having the receipt of it here, and the 27th, the 20th in the agenda notification, and then the 27th. So that all being cleared up. Seeing no questions or comments, I'm going to put this to vote for receipt of this information. So be passed, approved, and now we're going to go on to the rest of the meeting. There's no trustee motions of consideration. There's no communications. There's no notice of motions on the agenda. So I'm going to ask someone to put this agenda. I see Trustee Bailey's hand up, seconded by Trustee Benjamin. All those in favor, adjournment? We are now adjourned.